Hi, can you guys hear me? Oh, definitely. Hi, everyone, and thank you so much for the invitation to be here today and to present about our network, European Jews for Palestine. EJP is an umbrella network consisting of 22 Jewish organizations and collectives across 15 European and 13 EU countries. The groups represented by this network hold in common an uncompromising opposition to Israel's crimes against the Palestinian people and the Zionist state's ideology of Jewish supremacy. We share a determination to see our national and supranational governments cease their support and complicity with the state of Israel and its crimes. The roots of our network emerged back in March of 2023 in Paris, where the French collective SEDEC hosted a conference for anti-Zionist Jewish organizing in Europe. The conference was attended by over 400 people who had traveled from far and wide on their own budget to meet with other like-minded Jews, to organize and to begin building a path towards a collective contribution to the cause for Palestinian liberation. Despite the brutality of the genocide inflicted on Gaza, the majority of established Jewish organizations, like the JNF, which is the Jewish National Fund, of course, in Europe and across the world, continue to uncritically support the State of Israel, rendering themselves complicit in Israel's atrocities. These European organizations, like the State of Israel itself, claim to speak for all Jews, effectively implicating Jewish Europeans in Israel's actions while simultaneously ignoring and silencing the growing dissent within the Jewish community. A similar pattern can be seen within our national governments and within the EU itself. In all countries represented by EJP, our members struggle against governments that utilize Zionist narratives for their own political gain, while ignoring and repressing Jewish voices who dissent to their agenda. All over Europe, we see legislation popping up that uses Zionist rationales to repress opposition to Israel ever more violently. In response to this situation, EJP is organizing collectively to voice our opposition to this process of increasing repression in Europe. We know that the repression facing the global solidarity movement is not only a threat to our rights as people living in Europe, but that this repression is an essential tool used by our governments to protect the Israeli state from accountability for the ongoing genocide and the 76-year-long ethnic cleansing, occupation, and apartheid the state has perpetrated in Palestine. On Rosh Hashanah, October 3rd, 2023, our network had its formal launch at the European Parliament in Brussels. This event marked the start of our network's lobbying efforts at the EU level, where we see ourselves as uniquely positioned to oppose the Zionist influence, the pro-Israel influence that is embedded in EU politics. On that front, EJP is actively working to halt and reverse the institutionalization of the IHRA's infamous working definition on anti-Semitism, which I'm sure, as many of you know, categorizes valid criticisms of Israel as anti-Semitic hate crimes, providing political cover for the repression of pro-Palestinian activism. According to the EU's most recent report on the matter, EU member states, especially France and Germany, but this is prevalent across EU member states, have used the IHRA definition not only to establish criteria that ensure that no anti-Semitic groups receive state funding, but have also implemented the definition in the training of state employees, educators, court judges, and police officers. States have created police divisions to monitor for this form of anti-Semitism online and formed special policing units to enforce the definition in the streets. This trend is unfortunately only increasing in intensity with the new wave of anti-Semitism legislation sweeping across Europe since the 7th of October, including here in Denmark with the Handlingsplan mod antisemitisme, and of course what we see in Germany with the recent resolutions. The issue, of course, is that while anti-Semitism is very, very real, the IHRA definition is utterly bogus and a thinly veiled tool to suppress valid political viewpoints, and has the outcome of increased policing and surveillance of immigrant communities and Muslim populations in Europe. We are infuriated by the audacity of our governments to use our beloved Jewish communities as a shield for their racist policing and border policies, and we see this political manipulation as a continuation of the racist dynamics that were at play during the Holocaust. We are just as infuriated by the state of Israel hiding behind us, invoking the memory of our slaughtered ancestors, using our collective trauma as a perverse justification for their heinous abuse of power and sickening violence across historic Palestine, Lebanon, and beyond. Strategically, as a Jewish network, EJP advocates for the inclusion of our network in all matters concerning Jewish life in Europe, and we push for an approach in which all efforts at combating anti-Semitism are housed within a broader anti-racism perspective. Ultimately, we contend that anti-Semitism is a form of racism, like anti-Black racism, like Islamophobia, and that our safety as Jewish people lies not in the division, but in solidarity, not in the name of violence and policing, but in the power of care and community. In addition to our work with the IHRA, EJP is part of the ongoing campaign against the EU-Israel Association Agreement, which has been previously mentioned, and the broader campaign to remove Israel from eligibility for EU research funding through projects like Horizon 2020, which, if you haven't heard, has so far provided 1.2 billion euros to Israeli companies, with 126 million of that being sent since the 7th of October, including to explicitly military companies and institutions, as well as many what they call dual-purpose technology companies, which receive substantial contributions from EU funding pools. These numbers come from all the way back in 2015, a report published by the European Coordination of Committees and Associations for Palestine, and more recently, the Transnational Institute's reporting. Beyond our EU-level work, our network proudly serves as a space for our members to support one another, collaborating on statements, sharing ideas for actions, celebrating our rich cultural and religious traditions, and uplifting each other's narratives. We have many members and individuals who have come from Zionist backgrounds, from pro-Israel communities, and we seek to create a genuine alternative where we can celebrate our culture. All of our members, free from Zionist narratives, all of our members are active on the ground, and it is an honor and truly moving for our voice to be included in such an important conference such as this one, and to be reminded of all the work being done in service of the world to come. For indeed, it is not just us as Jews, but we believe our collective obligation as human beings to push back against the forces of violence and domination, to understand that military domination is not the path to peace and safety for anyone. We dream of a future where Judaism is liberated from the clutches of Zionism and the colonial mentality, where Palestine and Palestinians are free and living in dignity that all people deserve, and where human life is no longer subservient to the interests of the military-industrial complex and great power politics, where human rights and human life are universally respected. Yeah. So, thank you for your time, and as always, free Palestine.